My name is Ralph Coates. Everybody calls me RH Coates. I was on the Aries project for almost 5 years, basically from late 2006 through just the last couple months here in 2011, serving as an assistant chief engineer on the Aries project. I tell you what, the overall experience, very positive. The people, all of the people in this room, great people to work with. Aries did a little something different this time around to try to take knowledge capture, knowledge management, lessons learned, kind of take it to a new level. And I'll have more about that in the presentation. But I'm basically going to hit the key themes, the high points of the effort that we went through. Although it was a very involved effort, and I'll give you a little summary on that as we get into it a little bit more. But I appreciate everybody taking the time out of your busy schedules to sit in here with me a little bit. And I think the format we'll go through, I'll have my presentation, and then if folks have some questions or there's some other things you want to discuss, please bring them up. But anyway, go ahead, next chart. I wanted to start out, a lot of times I briefed this before, I kind of just got right into where we're at with knowledge management and the lessons learned, and I wanted to kind of start out with the preface, kind of more of a personal preface coming from me to you. I'm very encouraged by all the people that we've got great people both here within NASA and outside in our contractor base. And as you're going to see in the presentation, our lessons learned aren't new lessons learned. We're living a lot of the same lessons learned time and time again, and that's what we got to work on. But the people are great. We've got wonderful people, technically competent people, wonderful people. And I wanted to couch that right up front because we spend an awful lot of time after we do something or don't do something. We spend an awful lot of time, as engineers do, and technical people do, critiquing what we just went through. So we don't spend too much time saying the 100,000 things we did right. We spend an awful lot of time on the couple or couple hundred things that we want to improve on. But I did want to couch that saying that our people are great, but we do have some things we need to work on. And basically, the long story short is we do just need to renew or reinvigorate our resolve to improve in key areas that have less to do with the technical issues that we run into, but more to do with things like responsibility and authority, our core capabilities, core functions as we call them, out of our discipline areas, just good communication between our programs and projects and our technical people and our support personnel, all the way to budget and facilities and operations and the various centers and all the way from our contractors to launch and landing operations. So just better communications across the board is probably a very good bottom line, lesson learned. Just decision making, adequate planning, planning way out in front, having those important meetings very early and get the planning down on paper, and then just holding ourselves accountable to the planning that we put down. And that's what I talk about professional discipline is. Let's argue the rules of the road right up front, and then once we've had that argument, let's stick to them. So anyway, those are the things we can do inside. That's within our reach, within our grasp as NASA and working with our contractors. The bigger ones, and we talk about them all the time around the coffee pot and the lunch table, and these are bigger than us. These are the ones that we're going to need help. We need help from the population at large, our fellow citizens. We need help from our legislators. And these are longer-term issues. These are issues we just can't fix today inside of NASA or inside of the centers. They're issues that we have to fix. And that's basically just getting a longer-term perspective on these efforts. We tend to work on efforts that take half a dozen to a dozen years. We're working on things that take 4, 6, 8, 10 years to get done. And we're working with a decision-making at the highest levels that wants to change every year or two or every election cycle or every administration. And we realize we have to operate within that realm, but that is something that we need to work with and push against as best we can. And again, I know that goes to the highest levels. That goes to our center directors and our headquarters and the people that communicate with our lawmakers in Washington, D.C. But anyway, I didn't want to leave that out because that is a very important thing, and it's one of the biggest issues we deal with. Go ahead. I've talked this almost every time we've talked about knowledge management. Most of the wording today about lessons learned or knowledge management or knowledge capture have to deal with a more passive, as I like to explain it, gathering. We do a great job of gathering lessons learned, capturing them, writing them down, and then we tend to shelve them. We're not following up on too many of those things. And I'm proud of the fact that the people involved in the Aries project are attempting, for the first time in my experience, my 26 years, to try to put another step to that, and that's basically to make it a more active engagement. Basically, Aries, to my in my experience, is the first program or project to basically say, hey, what if we think about maybe making these lessons learned, look at the ones that are actionable, and try to put some wording in place. Not to say that those words will be the be-all, end-all, that'll be the finished action item, but to open the discussion, hey, here's what we recommend from our point of view, from the Aries project, that we go off and do, and then leave it to the expert, the discipline expert, and negotiate with him or her on what that actual final action should be, or if it's agreed to. Not to say that everything we've come up with here in the Aries project is necessarily the final end-all thing. It is what we, in our earliest, at this phase of, this is what our best attempt at negotiating with the discipline experts. But when a new person comes into power as a branch chief or a director or a division chief, they might say that isn't highest on my list of the issues that we are confronted with. Maybe they'll negotiate to say that there's other things that come in front of that. But this is our point of view, and I basically wanted to say I'm very proud of the fact they're attempting to implement something that has some action on the end of it, as opposed to just gathering lessons learned. Go ahead. Essentially, and this is kind of a very top-level summary of what we did on the Aries project. It was essentially gathered lessons learned, and we did it in several forms. I'm very proud of the knowledge management team that the Aries project put together, and it was great people, and they went out and basically canvassed the people that worked the Aries project and associated efforts with the Aries project to organize workshops, basically group activities to brainstorm and think of the issues that they wanted to get written in from their point of view as lessons learned. And obviously we grabbed these folks in their functional disciplines. We'd have a group of operations people sit down and say, from an operations point of view, what were your lessons learned? From budget and schedule point of view, what were your issues and concerns? What were the lessons learned, the good high points, the not so good points, and gather those. We also, they did kind of a more at-large format where you could basically a knowledge item description form, a KID form that was out, and it was basically a web-based, so you could catch the folks that you couldn't catch in a meeting. And I thought that was a great idea. And then the other thing was harvesting. There were a lot of groups that went through the exercise of pulling together their lessons learned. Good example off the top of my head, safety and mission assurance. They had already, by the time we had organized, they'd already said, next time we do this, these are the things we want to fix within SNMA. And they already had their lessons learned. So the harvesting aspect of that was basically to go out and say, hey, these groups have already spent some effort on that. Let's not bring them through the cycle again. Let's grab and harvest their lessons learned and pull it into our format. So all three of those said, there was a dramatic number of lessons learned. The raw, what we called them knowledge objects, the raw knowledge objects that came in, the if you will, the beginning nuggets of lessons learned, there were 1,958 that we went through. So there's almost 2,000 of these points of view from various people all across the project that the knowledge management team went through. And then another thing that we invoked last fall into the spring of this year was essentially pulling together a distilling team. And by distilling, what we were doing was, hey, we've got these almost 2,000 raw observations from everybody, these knowledge objects. Basically what we were doing was getting a smaller team of people with varied levels of skills, and what we did is we basically tapped into engineering leaders from engineering, SNMA, branch chiefs. We were tapped into kind of the branch chief or division level management type folks with skill sets across engineering, SNMA, and project representation. And then myself, as acting as part of the chief engineer's office, participated in that and chaired the discussions on that. But essentially what we were doing in distilling was basically boiling down and, number one, looking for duplicate pieces of information. Hey, I think these are saying the same thing from 2 points of view, doing that kind of effort, and basically boiling those down to areas that, hey, I think this is an actionable item. There were 3 or 4 people all said the same thing. We may not capture their specific words from each of the 4 people, but when you pull that thought together, here's what we think that says, and here's what might be the right thing to go do about it, and who should maybe do it. So essentially, signing an action or a recommended action, not the action, recommended action, that a discipline lead could look at and work with us on and say, you know, if you change the wording a little bit, I agree to that. I think that's something we could do. So that a lot of that distilling effort was boiling down those 2,000 observations into what we called knowledge items, or KIs. And from that 1,958 knowledge objects, we basically distilled out 463 of these knowledge items, and those I would say are the most closely related to what we would have used the term before, lessons learned. Those were lessons learned, but with a key difference. They had associated with them a recommendation for mitigating or improving or changing the issue, the lesson learned. So anyway, that's kind of the topic. Gathering and distilling is what we did, a little different than I've seen done before for lessons learned activities or knowledge capture activities. Go ahead, next page. And as I said, we came up with about 463 of these distinct knowledge items or lessons learned, if you would still want to use that language. And of those, they were spread across, and what we did is we separated them into functional areas. We thought, hey, the best way to, when somebody picks this up or starts where we left off, we probably want to already have put them into where we think the most logical areas are. So we took the 463 and grouped them into what we roughly would call discipline areas. For example, group for program planning, group for SNMA, group for design and analysis. And so they should fairly well line up with the org structure here at Marshall. So anyway, that was the thinking going into that, and that's what we ended up with on our final report. But anyway, the other one point I wanted to point out was, hey, yeah, we covered 29 areas with 463 of these lessons learned, these knowledge items, but more than half of them were in about the top 8. And if you want to read through those, you can see most of those areas. You see words like planning, management. They fall out into some key thematic areas like communication, planning, and things like that. So you'll see why, hopefully, what I'm going to talk about mainly today are those key theme areas that came out of, so if you will, 1,958 raw observations, 463 grouped, if you will, functionally, lessons learned or knowledge items, and about 10 theme areas, whereas if you didn't know anything else and you just knew the theme areas, you'd probably be hitting close to the target if you worked on those areas. So that's our thinking, and that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about today. But anyway, the culmination of that effort by the knowledge management team coming out of the Aries project was essentially the release of a knowledge management report, APO 1104, back in October, just, now it's a month ago. Seems like it wasn't that long ago now. But anyway, so that was culmination of that. That report is out there for people to read and utilize as they wish. But we'll talk a little bit more about that, how we're going to try to push a little bit more on that, work with the Chief Engineer's Office on that a little bit more. Go ahead, next chart. The other fundamental thing, other than the report, we talked about the products, if you will, of the process were to develop the report, develop a database where people can search and look at the things if they want to go out and look at more information regarding the knowledge capture. But the other thing that really has come out of it is kind of a two-pronged attack. We really thought what we need to offer up to the center is, hey guys, what we recommend, don't do knowledge capture, don't do lessons learned just at the waypoints, the big milestones, at the end of a program, after all the dust settles, or maybe doesn't settle so well. What are our big issues? What did we run into? What did we bump our heads on, and things like that? What we thought we should offer up to the center is, hey, why don't we start a continuous process? In fact, industry, and we're even aware about it here, is continuous process and product improvement. You'll hear those things, CPI, CPPI, and things like that. Essentially, what we were recommending to the center, to our bosses, why don't we start up, just say 24/7, the door's always open. If there's some chronic issue that comes up, approach it like, hey, and we think of the target area because lessons learned, knowledge management tends to be put into the chief engineer's, bailiwick of responsibilities. So that's where we targeted, and that's kind of where we're pushing right now. Chief engineer's office kind of take responsibility for that. But that's the big thing. Open up a more simplified, not something that nearly as involved as what we went through on Aries, but the same basic steps. Bring an issue up to some awareness of an adjudicating body like chief engineer's office. Get the right people in to discuss it. And our thinking there was the right people are whatever the topic's about. If the topic is about design, bring in the head of design to talk with the chief engineer, maybe the people or person or persons that voice the issue, especially if it's a recurring issue, and say, hey, what can we do about it? And who should do something about it? And get a position on that, and then see, is it something we can just go do, or do we need funding? Do we need to wait for the next program that has the dollars, the resources to work the issue? Or if it's just something we can do on our own, let's just do it. Let's just get it done. So that was one of the other byproducts. Offer up to the center a continuous process, hopefully a more simplified process that we can work lessons learned as they come up. But don't negate the fact that you probably want to invoke a process, maybe very similar to what we did on Aries, at major milestones, ends of programs, things like that. So anyway, that was where we left with that. We submit our report. Obviously, we're doing that very similarly to what other programs have done in the past. But don't let it lay on the shelf. Hey guys, let's think about invoking some of the actions that are recommended there, and then let's also think about setting up a more continuous process. But anyway, go ahead. Next chart. Now that said, kind of walked you through to how we got down from the many observations to the fewer but still significant number of lessons learned or knowledge items, and then what I want to spend some time with you folks, and you probably are going to have more questions on, is those key themes. We talk about 10 key themes that kind of, for those of you that have done that before, I'd almost call them like root cause. The things that if you ask on each of the knowledge items or the lessons learned, why? Why do you think that happened? Ask the 5 whys. And I kind of did that. That was kind of exercise I did within my own little small brain here. And that's where I kept coming back to these same 10 key themes, and that's what we'll talk about right now. You can kind of see them right here. They're not in any particular order. This is just, the order we wrote them up. So there's not necessarily a flow to these, but you'll see there's connection between these, and I'll try to talk a little bit about that as we get into it. Go ahead. Key theme area number 1 was basically leadership and discipline, and again, let me start much like I did in my preface comments. This is not an indictment of people. We've got very good people. It's just our experience base. We've not had this huge of programs like SLS or like Constellation or like Aries in a long time. So we need to flag out the issues that come up for every aspect, all of our disciplines, managerial, that's a discipline, and poke on those things. And a lot of them come back on us too. And I'll talk a little bit about it when we get to the end of this one. Essentially, give you a little background on where the key theme is coming from. Now, there's some people think, and again, when you're dealing with people's points of view, you get varying things. Some people thought everything was working fine in leadership and discipline. Other people thought, from their points of view, wherever those may be in the program or projects, there were issues that got flagged out. But in general, one of the themes was, at times, the decision processes for both the constellation level, program level, and that's pertinent to us now because we are starting up a program here at Marshall for SLS, both at the constellation level, program level, and at the projects level, Aries being one of the projects under Constellation. The approval process at times, depending on who you talk to, was I'm not quite sure what hoop I need to jump through next to get this decided on. Lots of redos, and oh my gosh, I've briefed 7 groups already. What 8, 9, and 10 before I can get to the magic desk where the pen comes down and the decision is made. And so a lot of it was very real to a lot of the people that were working change processes, documenting technical change, programmatic change, and things like that. Wasn't quite sure. They were wanting to know, where's the cheese? I'm going through the maze and I don't know where the cheese is yet. So tell me where the cheese is. And a lot of times, the second point there, it wasn't clear. And part of that, as you can see, is, well, if you don't know which desk to go to, it's probably because you're not sure who's really got responsibility and authority for the thing you're working on. So that said, as the background for this, thematic area, our summary recommendations were, hey, just basically, and again, this, you can see this one ties back into planning and back into, good communication and things like that. But make sure it's very clear, hey, what is the path or the process for getting something changed, and where do I go? Do I have to go through panels, boards, all these things? And again, I know and everybody's saying, oh, they point directly, program planning, SEMP. They do. But we need to make sure that it's very clearly defined in there. And these do sound like motherhood, but guess what, folks? We keep running into these. And what's even more interesting, you go back and look at past programs and projects. The good news is we're not much different than our predecessors. These are all issues people have worked through and pushed through. The good news is we're not, like I said, we're not much different than our predecessors. The bad news is we're not much different than our predecessors. We're doing the same things again, things like that. And they manifest themselves by, higher costs and more time to get through something that we all think, gosh, this should be a lot easier than what it is. But anyway, make sure it's very clear, the path. Make sure it's very clear who the decision makers are. And that's another thing that goes hand in hand with that leadership and discipline. A lot of times, and and I won't call anybody out, but there were times when people were given responsibility but not authority. Now that's a key thing. I can tell you, you're responsible for building my next car. And you might think, well, that might be fun, but if I don't give you any authority, if I don't give you the dollars, the resources, the tools you need to do it, I really haven't done it. I'm not going to get a car. In fact, I'm giving you anguish is all I've given. You're not going to be able to get it done. So along with that, you can have a beautiful plan for a process, and everybody knows where to go. But if the people in those boxes that are going to be making the decisions don't have clear-cut responsibility, they know it's coming to them, and they're responsible for the change. And then here's the other one, the authority. They can sign the check if it's on their desk. Now, the other thing is, if they can't sign the check, they don't need to sign off on it. That is truly, they may have been given, responsibility, but if they don't have that authority, the ability to affect the resources to do it, then that's how we simplify the process a little bit more. So anyway, key thing there, just know where to go, who to go to, and then let's make sure our planning says this person has responsibility and they have authority. And obviously, there's the other overarching things. We want to delegate that as low down as we can. Put it at the appropriate level so that if somebody working on, for example, the tire builder on your car, he knows all about tires, and he's got the appropriate amount of money, all the right tooling to work a tire issue when it comes up. You don't have to bring it up to the head of GM every time you go work on a car tire or anything like that. So anyway, let's, and then the other key part on that I want to emphasize, when we give people that responsibility, being the they have responsibility, they have authority, they know it, we know it, and we're bringing the issue to them. If we brought all the voices on that decision into the package for them to decide, there's two things. There's two sides of that coin. The first side is the decision maker. He has to hear everybody. He has to hear all the complaints, the pros, the cons, the people that hate it, the people that love it, the people that don't care. He's got to take into all that account. But he doesn't have to do everything everybody says. He or she makes that decision. The flip side of that coin is, if we put all the voices into that decision package, that's incumbent upon all of us, the worker bees around all of our decision makers. Make sure the voices all get heard in there. Once they're heard, he makes the decision or she makes the decision. Our job, the discipline side of that, is we follow the decision. We don't bring it back again. I don't like the decision, so I'm just going to take it up around a different thing. No, it should come right back to the same guy's desk, and he should say, didn't we just make that decision? It's recorded, right? Okay, let's just get on with it. Move to the next decision. So anyway, there's two sides of that coin. We can't just poke on our bosses about that one. Go ahead, next one. Plan ahead. Boy, big one. In fact, there were many a times when I was going through the distilling process and looking at all this, my gosh, these all point at planning. Just plan your work your plan. And but the kind of the key thing here, and again, we write wonderful papers, systems engineering papers, about how to do programs and projects. The problem is we never start them the way our papers start out. We start up with ideal conditions, write a wonderful paper on how to do a program or project and how the process should work, but we've never been handed programs and projects that start the way they start here. Good example, Constellation Aries started very fast at the parts of the vehicle or the parts of the system that were already in existence. Example, first stage already existed on shuttle, not on Constellation, not on Aries, as a part of the shuttle. They were off and running. Obviously had a head start on everybody else. Upper stage engine got a full head of steam going toward a design. Again, they're testing today, so they're one of the real pieces of hardware that came out of Constellation and Aries, and they were off and running. The program, the place where you want all the decisions to cascade down from on high, started way behind that. And it's not to critique the folks in the Constellation program. Fact of the matter was, we started very project element accelerated, and program came in behind. And what did it do? It set the stage for a lot of what we call, what everybody's, the scary word, creep. There was a lot of times scope change, cost issues got worked at much higher levels than our pay grade, and would cascade down and literally upset our apple cart, when things would come through. And of course, there's, a lot of, subordinate issues that go with that. But the key thing there is just set the stage for things, big decisions coming later that affected already existing hardware, software, and processes that drove a lot of issues, cost issues, schedule issues, and things like that. So bottom line, to kind of get it back around to the recommendations and avoid kind of that ready, fire, aim syndrome, if you will, is get the key players. Identify the key players first. Get if you will, determine what the seats on the bus are. Get the people in the seats that you need in the seats on the bus, and then walk through the process. Now, I'm encouraged in some ways. SLS has done some or part of some of these things, and in some ways they're kind of lagging. Program plan's not out there yet, so that's one issue. We kind of help our brethren over there in the SLS program. Come on, guys, planning first. Get your plans, get your strategy, get your development plan, get all that laid out, because the planner is what is going to tell everybody else what to go do. Instead of all of us now armchair quarterbacking from wherever we are saying, wonder why they don't have that. Well, the plan's not out there yet. So that's one thing we need to help our brothers and sisters over in SLS on. So bottom line, it really pushes hard on getting things like the program plan, project plans, master schedules, push them up in front, get them up there early. Get the SIMP out. One of the better looking SIMPs I've seen in a long time. Development plan, we're lagging on that. We need to work on that. And then it also pushes on, hey, before we get going, and I will say, coming from the contractor background, before you go bid on a new program, you usually check to see, are your things working that you're going to use on the program? In other words, you don't go tell somebody you're going to build a car when you don't have at least the beginnings, of getting the factory work laid in there a little bit. Now you can do it, but boy, you may be going off into a ditch that you won't be able to recover from when you try to prove that to your, when they're reviewing your proposal. That's tougher on the NASA side. But we still need to do that same kind of thing. One of the key things that I won't say we didn't not do it, but we just didn't give them as much support. We didn't give them as much credibility early on. We didn't really know how important things like configuration management, data management. We knew they were important, but boy, did we miss the target on how big they would drive other issues. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in another key thing. Drawing and model standards. We, as a center, said we're going to design one of the major elements, the upper stage and things like that. But we hadn't really laid in some Now there was lots of discourse and discussion among technical entities, but nothing was laid in as, defining standards for drawings, three-dimensional CAD and things like that. And these issues, they weren't showstoppers, but they were impediments. They slowed us down in some areas and made things much more difficult than they should have been. A lot of the big contractors, they've done, failed, and restarted these efforts many times. And in fact, one of the contractors said, we've done this 4 times, and we're only now starting to get it right. And when I say that, getting their standards for their three-dimensional, moving from the world of paper to the world of electronics, huge effort, years and many millions of dollars. And I think we were kind of, to be honest, naive as a group, as an entity, how much effort it would take to get those up and running. So anyway, next chart. So just planning ahead, working a lot of things as best as we can, walking through them. Communication. Big thing there is like any program, and it won't be different on SLS. You'll start with a program, and as it spirals out and more people are involved, more ideas are involved, guess what? Everybody's idea is going to get changed a little bit. They're going to tweak it as they analyze it and look at things. Well, guess what? Decisions and communication now become, instead of 6 people talking around a table about a potential vehicle that they might have, it's thousands of people talking about details on that vehicle, and now decision-making becomes just huge volumes of decision-making. So we need to make this communication as efficient and as, what's the right word, simple and accessible as we can. And doggone it, we don't have an excuse to fall back on. We live in an age now where communication is right at our fingertips. We just need to avail ourselves of it and make it as simple as we can. But so anyway, volume of data, volume of decisions, it's going to be a lot. And it's going to get more critical as we get closer to real hardware for any program. So that there'll be a lot more at stake. More people will be faces will be a little redder, the tempers will be a little hotter as you get into real hardware and tight schedules. And the meter is running on the hundreds or the thousands of people that are working on the whole program as you wait for things to happen. So, and then the other one that was kind of key point, there was times when people thought, hey, the decision was made, but I wasn't in on it. So some of the redos on decisions were because major players were missed. And that's just good. I'll feed that back to you. Shoring up our CM and DM, having a very firm rules. In other words, argue the rules first. Then when we set the rules, we got to stick to the rules. Hey guys, we wrote the rules. You don't sign the contract on your house, start paying on your house, and just say, I don't want to do that anymore. Well, guess what? The law dogs come after you on that. Well, we need to kind of be persnickety like that and say, once we've agreed to the rules, we know how we're going to screen to get the right stakeholders in on every decision. Once we do it, that's what you do. And if you didn't belly up to the bar and get your voice heard, that's on you. But anyway, the key things I pulled out from a lot of our lessons learned were, hey guys, define what is a good decision. And I'm seeing the elements of that coming together, and then have a better work on our screening process to be rigorous about all the voices got heard for this topic. And that doesn't mean everybody needs to weigh in on every decision. No, you'll get bogged down there. But we need to refine that process for screening who needs to be in on the decisions. And I think when we get there, that'll help out tremendously. And then continue to promote informal communication. One of the things that was a positive that came out, people thought their communication with their cohorts or their counterparts at contractors and even within the program and across centers was pretty good. Where they would get kind of hung up was, okay, we're agreed, who we take it to now. So that, it falls back to that, what wickets do we have to jump through to get it done? So basically, just continue to promote the informal communication. Just let everybody know it is informal. You are only gathering the data necessary to get into a decision package. You have not done if me and you agree, doesn't mean the program's agreed. You and me may agree, we've got a decision package, but now we got to go find the right boss that has the responsibility and authority to do it. So, and you want it to go to the lowest boss that's got the money that can do that job. Yeah, and so bottom line is just the big thing on this one, and I use this term a lot. We got to teach each other to be traffic cops. In other words, everybody knows generally, well, shoot, all else fails, it's got to go through the ERB. It's got to get in front of the chief engineer at some point if it's a technical issue. And unless, if it's got any kind of a price tag associated with it, it's got to go to the program boss. So we know at least it's two steps. It's got to go through the ERB and the PCB to get anything done. But PCB can say, if it doesn't affect me, you don't need to come and ask me to write a check. I'll let my chief engineer make those decisions. So that's basically what we just got to, as simple as we can. And then everything else is just gathering the information to help get those decisions made. And I used to think, well, gosh, isn't it that simple? Well, no, when you start to write it down, they can get fairly complex on who all has to see everything. But anyway, that's what we need to work on, trying to emphasize that, sticking to the rules of the road. Everybody knows the rules of the road, and we have them written down. Anyway, go ahead, next one. Again, tying it all together. Now, there's certain people that we've got to give them permission to own those rules of the road and hold us accountable to those. And this is one where CM folks, I always used to tell them, like, there's certain people you just got to give them permission to be just nasty. They have to just poke on you and say, no, that's not what you said you were going to do. You got to do this. You got to give the package to me in this format, and things like that. And those are the CM and DM folks, the configuration management, data management. We need to tell them, here's what we want. We need access to all our data. I can read anything. I can't change anything except what I'm responsible for. And then when I do change the things I'm responsible for, those things that are key to everybody else, that need configuration control, that if I change it and I don't tell anybody else, it causes problems, those need to go from data management over to configuration management. And those things need to be locked. Once we put them into the configuration management, we're giving the CM folks permission, hey, there's only one way to get that out. You got to pull the one that's released, and you got to work on that one, and you got to give it to me back in this format so I can affect the change appropriately and get the word out to everybody else that it affects. So, but the big thing is, again, like we talked in planning, you got to do that early. Determine what those basic needs are. Not, I want everything yesterday. It's, well, I'd like to have these things, but these are the critical functions I need. Hey, DM guys, I need this. I'd like to have a whiz-bangy. I think about it and the data comes to me, but I know that's not in the cards right now. But I'd like at least have something that's intuitive. I know where to go find data, and I know when I pull on it, it tells me, hey, you're pulling on release data. So this isn't just, or this data isn't, it's good data, but it's just not critical data. It's data that just is out there for information only. And those basic things we need to decide up front. And what is must-have versus nice-to-have. And then once we've locked in, hey, this is in the must-have thing, just rigor. That's, again, where it's discipline on our CM and DM folks and discipline on us is, hey, guys, we know the difference between informal data and formalized data. And then the big thing is, and what we really didn't do, we didn't fortify a centralized CM and DM function. We didn't say, hey, this is worthy of having its own office that makes sure that we follow the rules of good CM and DM. And I am seeing that, and I'm proud of the fact that they have stood up in an area that's just devoted to, hey guys, let's get it to the manageable size, so we're not giant. You know, the whole program is not about CMDM. It's about getting a product out. But they have, hopefully, and they need to, and that's where we're going to argue, do they have the right number of people, the right mix of skills, that they're getting the products that we need? What we agreed to up here that we must have, they're able to get it for us. And then again, we need to just make sure that whatever we do here at Marshall, it works with. It doesn't have to be a carbon copy of what JSC is doing or KSC is doing, but it has to communicate with our other, our other brothers, if you will, in the program, and then our contractor base. So we have to be careful about edicting. Thou shalt everybody have the same, process. Well, guys, we just know we're all brothers and sisters of different mothers and fathers, so the chance of us all having the exact same process with the same tool, just minimal. But the protocols in between, any report I put out should be readable by anybody else that puts it out. Good example, PDF's a good example of that. Anybody that can pull up, Acrobat can get PDF files once they've established that. And it's kind of freeware, shareware, if you will, to the community. Same kind of thinking like that. If we cross over and say, hey, I got CAD, but it's in my format, well, it may be incumbent upon you to give it to something universally readable by that. And that's the thing we need to leave to our folks and say, I want this. I want to be able to look at any CAD file from any of my, any of my subordinate elements, but I don't want to invoke the cost on them to making it all one system. But they need to add maybe just a little bit of extra cost to say, I can give it to you in a format that you can pull on, and you can pull it up in your tool. So anyway, those are the kinds of things we need to think about there. And a lot of the communications issues worked along these same lines. I know what I want. I just know where to go to find it. Or I know what I want. I know where it is. I just can't open it. Those kinds of things. A lot of issues where I knock on the door and nobody answers. I can see the gift inside the window there. I can't get it. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that one later. Go ahead. Point 5, design and analysis integration. Again, this one goes back to a lot of communication, a lot of planning. It won't be any simpler for any big complex program. Big programs with lots of parts and lots of interfaces have big system challenges, and especially early on when everything's soft. You're changing this and changing that and analyzing this and analyzing that, but you do have to basically say somebody's got to be the orchestrator of how we'll go into that. And essentially, this theme goes back to define who's going to be, who's going to call the shots in that. What configuration are we analyzing when? What does that configuration consist of? What is in it? In other words, so we all know what parts are in it. What name are you going to give it so everybody knows what you're talking about? And then what analyses need to be done when? And I'm starting to see, I'm seeing the SLS folks are working on that. Matt Ramsey is saying weekly, I'm saying, here's configuration. Hasn't changed this week. This is the one I analyzed to. The target one, the design to, and the build to, they're out here to the right. We're not too worried about them right now. The, if you will, the engineer to or the develop to right here, we're keeping track of that one because that's the one we're analyzing today. Realizing we got to get eventually to the build to. And anyway, so clearly defined in charge, I'm hopeful about what we're seeing in SLS, and clearly to describe how the design and integration work together. What is the configuration? Who's got to look at it now? One of the issues, it seemed to come up a lot, everybody thought they had to analyze everything now. That's one of the, not that it happened all the time, but there was a lot of times when you're thinking, hey guys, we won't need to do that until like after CDR. So that's the thing, where this design analysis integration say, here's the things you need to do now just to basically size the vehicle. Later on, we're going to get to, what color to paint it, and what numbers to put on the side of it, and how many fins it's going to have, and that kind of thing. So, long story short, basically defining responsibility, getting it codified, what we're going to work to. Okay, go ahead. Experience. I said about that in my introductory comments. We got great people. As evidenced by the points of view and the issues we ran into, and this is one that goes across. This isn't just a NASA thing. Our industry base is in the same predicament. if you think about it, you look back, shuttle, ELV, there aren't a lot of people around today that have done any large, complex system like that. Now that's not to say there's other large, complex systems out there, but particular to our type of disciplines and the kind of margins we deal with, and just the, if you will, the feel for the right thing. Most of our experience base came out of operational systems. I even classify myself, I did work some development on R68 and things like that, but I'd say by and large, most of where I grew up was on, the SSME was already developed. We were doing block changes, modifying that. And of course we went in and changed a lot of things. So we did get to look inside almost every corner of it, but I didn't own the design. I didn't grow up on the design like we are growing up right now. We're coming up the learning curve on Aries and now on SLS. So, but the reason I bring that up is what we tend to do is say, oh, we've done it. We've went to the moon. So this time around should be a lot cheaper, a lot faster. And then you have to just say, all I'm saying there, the warning sign is, whoa, 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 whoa. No, we didn't. And it's a critical thing. The guys, our predecessors, our old bosses, they did, but they can't pass on with full 100% transmission. They can't pass on all their experiences. Why were they hard-nosed about certain things and don't worry about it now kind of stuff. We're relearning those things as we develop these complex systems. So I'm not trying to give everybody just hey, I don't have to feel bad about it. No, we got to work on learning more. But most of our background came from operational systems like station, shuttle, and things like that. It's a big turn to go back to developing and deciding why everything needs to be set the way it is. And so anyway, the lack of experience isn't a problem in and of itself. That was the point I was trying to make. But having a lack of experience and not acknowledging it, and in fact saying, well, we'll just do it twice as fast. Well, guys, that's pretty cavalier. What's your plan for getting those critical areas up to speed when we don't have anybody that has ever done that? Now, we've got some great people that can learn, but you got to give them a little time to come up the curve, the learning curve. So anyway, this one is basically saying, don't take too much credit in those areas where you don't have experience. Take more credit where you've got the folks that have done that already. And then the other side of that coin is grab a hold of the guys that just bumped their heads on Aries or Orion or working ops. They'll want to fix the things that didn't work so well on Constellation or Aries and things like that. So grab a hold. You don't have anybody else that's come up the learning curve this far. Well, obviously, we're not as far as we want along, but you do have some folks that have bumped their heads on some things, and they'll want to make sure that nobody else bumps their head on it. So avail yourselves of the experience base that you do have is the other kind of parting shot to that. The other thing is program centers, kind of words to our bosses. Look for opportunities, and I think they're going to come up. There's a lot of technology money out there that is not, if you will, directly piped to SLS, but industry and the centers, including Marshall, can take advantage. Our best learning tools are going to be put the new people, or not the not so new people, old folks like me and stuff like that, put them in areas where you say, hey, if I really want this guy to be good at something, train him up on this thing, because if he really screws this one up, I mean, I can deal with that, but gosh darn it, this one's so critical, we can't mess too much on it. So the real critical areas we may want to say, hey, we may want to get some folks up to speed before they go in on these things, or fill the most critical areas with the folks that have just done it. That's kind of our parting shot, if you will, for this discussion on experience. Go ahead, next chart. End product. This is one that this is more, hey, point of view. A lot of times we got into, in the background situation, there's times when it became about the process. There were times when you'd say, and what I was trying to say, if you ever caught yourself saying, wow, there's too much bureaucracy, that's people adding process to get more process going, because, gosh, the process has got to be right, to make the product very good. It's not a bad thing in and of itself, But when you find yourself doing more to the process than you are affecting the end product, watch out for those things, and watch out for things like whenever you catch yourself saying the bureaucracies drive me crazy, or it's never quite enough. We can't, hey guys, we could deliver the product right now, but it's not quite there. It's not, process isn't quite ready. We're not, so if you ever get yourself in discussions like it's not quite ready yet, then it's, well, how ready does it have to be? How good does it have to be? Not sure of when. No, everybody's involved in the process, but they're not quite sure when we will have sausage. I put the meat in, and I know guys running the grinder, and I see people bringing casings in and everything like that, and I know there's something coming out of the tail of this thing, but I'm not really quite sure that when I load meat in, add spices, I'm not quite sure when we'll be done making sausage. Not, so if those are the symptoms of if you see that kind of thing, and I'm not saying it was widespread, but it was one of the key themes that we saw kind of dispersed through a lot of our inputs and points of view from people. Think about, are we getting wrapped around the process and we're not getting focused on what are we trying to do? And sometimes it may mean what we said, hey, that's good enough. Let's get the collective here. We got that process done. The grinder's working. Let's get the new folks in there to work it. We need to move on and get the next process working. Packaging the sausage, shipping the sausage out, getting everything, getting it distributed to the right people. What's the end product? Get the sausage on the table, things like that. And long story short, we've just got to come back around to that same mindset. At some point in time, we've got to deliver a vehicle. How does this thing here, get you closer to a vehicle? And if you're close enough, you might ask permission. Can I quit fixing the process? Yeah, let's move you folks over and get you working the next thing. So just, continue, just emphasize getting down to the minimal set of core processes we have to do to get the end product. And then once we've agreed and fought and fought with one another over what those core processes are, make sure it's just about getting to the end product and not just making the process better. Okay, next one. Topic 8, budget and schedule. And I defer, I'm not a budget and schedule guy. I'm a tech guy, so this is one of those things. Oh man, yeah, we got to keep track of the costs and schedule. But the key thing here was the symptoms or the words we saw coming in from a lot of folks, mainly obviously technical, and even coming in from our budget and schedule experts were we were never quite sure if we had exactly right today where we're at on the tasks that we need to get done, and my budget schedule exactly reflects that. And I know how to get to it, but I can't because I'm in a replan activity because we just got told we're going to be cut 15%, and we got to work an activity to say what things can be put on the chopping block to get. We overworked, and this is my point of view. We overworked our disciplined people that were hired to track our budget and schedule to do all the what ifs when our new schedule and budget come down, if it ever comes down, but it usually got changed before it came down. So bottom line, lots of annual playing. The puppeteers were playing, we're like, man, we got to get the cost down. And so there was a lot of activity, lots of frenzied activity, but we were never quite sure is this where we're at right today with what we've got. And so the way I wrapped it up was fundamentally, and we worked this with our budget, discipline lead, and things, and a representative from that. Basically, we need to get to some tools and processes that work both from the way headquarters sends us money and sends us requirements, from Congress and from the administration and from our headquarters, that we can invoke as simple as we can get. Boy, I know that's big words to say for a federal entity like NASA and things like that. But as simple as we can get, we know what dollars are coming in, at what rate, and we've got a standardized method. We have our experts that know about budget and schedule. Here's the template for how we'll track budget. Here's the template for how we'll track schedule. And our contractors, our primes, will put in, now they may have their own method, but they will put in, again, like we were talking about, when you send information across, I'm not going to dictate to you guys that you have to use X tool, but you have to have it where when it comes in and ports over, and you put dollars and schedule milestones into my schedule, we've agreed to the format that we're going to take in. So that what you're doing then is your budget schedule people are actually working the issues that need to come up. You're actually seeing where you are right now, and you're not spending the time all the time trying to get to the format that gets you there, and then also trying to balance all the exercises that come from lack of a long-term commitment. Essentially, we were reacting a lot to, yeah, we know we said this is going to happen in FY11, but here's what's really coming down, and then continuous resolutions and all the other things that send just shock waves down through a program. So anyway, some of those things are big. We have to support our center people as they go up and work at the headquarters level to try to get where they can send us. We agree on how we will get information on our money and things like that, and we get very, if you will, we get very clear about how we're going to report budget schedule. So bottom line, allow our experts to tell us what are the right things. Lock in those rules of the road for watching, tracking budget schedule, and then stick to those, essentially. And then the other thing, and it goes back to that one that keeps coming up time and time again, is somehow we've got to work with our elected officials, and it should be through our big bosses, is what can you do to give us a longer-term support? In other words, if you want space, in other words, by all means, have the argument. What do you want to do for space exploration? What does it consist of? I know they're having those arguments right now. It takes a long time. Our wonderful, Republican, representative legislation talks an awful lot, but when it's all said and done, much less is said. Much more said than done. So we need to work with the fact that they need to work on giving us a longer-term support. So in other words, if something takes 8 years, give us 8 years of a window of money and schedule, and then hold us accountable to what we get done within that 8 years, or whatever that predetermined time is. Go ahead. Next one. Training. Again, this one links right back to our experience, and I kind of said it a little bit again. There appeared to be a lack of information early enough in the program. And again, it was, well, if you're not quite sure about what the plan is, and you're not quite sure about what the program needs from you, well, you can't really go out on a limb and decide, well, hey guys, we just need to determine in our own disciplines. My thing, I'm kind of speaking to the worker bee level here. If you are in design, you know what are the key things you need to get a design out. Do you have a way to teach the new guy when he comes in? Do you know, in other words, the critical skills are? And the fact of the matter is, most of the people you talk to in all the disciplines, yeah, they know what they need. That's how they became the experienced people. They have learned what you need to do. The problem we have, and it, again, industries went through this learning curve too, we don't often write down, here are the key things you need to know how to do. Now, some areas have they have good, what I'd call their critical skills, and we even had what we call desk level instructions, basically saying, here's how you do a power balance. Here's how you do a basic, engine system sizing, thing. Not everybody has those things. So that's my thing. I'm kind of speaking back to, like I said, at the worker bee level. Identify those things that are just critical. I got to have these things. There's a lot of things we'd like to have, but on the things you got to have, go out there and determine what are the basic skill sets you need to have, what information, tools do you have to have access to get the job done. Again, one of the things we talked about, a new thing that's been thrown on us, not thrown on us, but it's in this new world, it's a little more suspicious of the world, the entities around us and things like that. Security is going to be a big thing, and it's just an overhead that we're all going to have to work with. But basically, emphasize that early planning, even if it doesn't come down from on high from the programs. I want this on this date by this. So, now I've got clear marching orders. Well, they're going to want this. They're going to want a CAD package. They're going to want these. Let's get off our tails and work on some of these critical skills and things like that. And then, again, keep going back to the small tasks are good homes for honing those skills. In other words, get the young guy or the young gal working in the new program doing all the design work and and us, if you will, older guys and gals, we're working on, here's the basic functional process I want you to work to, and then all my people are going to kind of work to our standard. This is going to be our standard for our critical skills. So work on those things. And then obviously we got some really, it's always interesting when you hear people that said, I went to some training, or I did some training online. And you kind of get this, you can train from your desk. You can train from your cotton pick an iPhone if you want to, or your iPad. We're never quite really excited about the content. And it's like, oh man, I took 4 hours to take a 20-minute discussion and things like that. My take on it was, we got some really interesting tools out there. We need to avail ourselves of utilizing that commodity, our IT type tools and things like that, but really cull it back to, hey, what does the person need to know to do this job, and kind of, if you will, set up our training more to the point. What do we need? Okay, go ahead. Last one here. Heritage hardware. Gosh, man, I'll tell you what, probably everybody in the room, and it came up, obviously, J2X and First Stage were heritage. They had existed. Again, just like experience, lack of experience isn't in and of itself a bad thing. You can fix inexperience by going out and doing things. Heritage hardware in and of itself is not a bad thing unless you take credit. Like, oh, good example. I'm working on some stuff now. Well, we got the F1. Yeah, we got the F1 engine. Whoa, guys. There are things, I try to tell them, things that look like F1 engines out there. That's all the parts. But guess what, guys? When we dig into them, we're going to find out, oh, I finally figured out why the guys did it like that back in 1965. Shoot, we don't do it like that anymore. Now, we may say, command decision, we'll do it like they did back in 65. But I guarantee you, we'll go in and say, if I'm not using the F1 on the Saturn V, it probably ain't going to be an F1 when I'm done with it. So, long story short, heritage is not bad in itself. We got some great things out there like our SRMs, F1s, J2s. But guess what, guys? The J2X that's firing now is not the same engine. The J2X is not the same engine that the J2 was. And we spent a lot of time trying to stay heritage when the fact of the matter was you're just jumping off from a point, taking advantage of that. But guys, we already said that we're so far along. No, guys, hey guys, the problem is you grab a heritage and then you assume everything about it's already paid for. You've already done the development. No, you did not do the development on J2. You took advantage of a cycle that exists, parts that exist, and now you're going to see, how can I fit it in that? The bottom line is, hey guys, you can say it's heritage, but you're not going to get all benefit of all things heritage. Only because our margins are for design aren't, we can't take Buick, put a new body style on it, and it's, we can't do that. Our margins are so tight. You will have to modify, more than likely, the F1 to make it work on an SLS booster. You will more than likely have to modify. We're going to have to modify the RSRMs. Why? Well, man, it's just like shuttle. It's a core tank with, guys, it's not flying like a shuttle. So guess what? Loads won't be like a shuttle. So we're going to tweak. So holding the guy's feet to the fire about stay like shuttle, well, what they're doing is they're going to say, well, if I beef it up, if I put more margin in it, yeah, then it can act like a shuttle. It can act like a, the Buick can act like a Cadillac if you put enough margin in it. Cars are built with a lot more margin in them to switch parts and things like that. Rockets aren't built like that. So that's bottom line what I'm saying. Heritage ain't a bad idea in and of itself, only when you undermine yourself with shorten your dollars, shorten your schedule, thinking the money's going to go somewhere else. It's either going to go into integration, it's going to go into modification of GSE, it's going to go into modification of interfaces. It won't be free. Heritage doesn't give you a pass on system level engineering. So that kind of hits the high points there. Yeah, long story short, I'm really kind of adamant about this heritage thing. Go ahead, next one. That said, wrap up. The big thing I wanted to do, I just wanted to leave people with thinking, hey, hey, wow, well, that was, that was good. He almost put me to sleep, and things like that. So what do you want me to walk away with this, Ari? Well, the big thing I would say, it kind of an admonishment or kind of a wrap-up coming out of the lessons learned, in your own functional areas, from wherever you come from, business office, design, risk mitigation, risk management, project office, work in your areas. You don't have to wait to come from on high, from the center director. You don't have to wait for it to come from the chief engineer's office. You can work on, working from just, I wrote down all my lessons learned to, well, let me pull them out and try to do something about them. Well, but I'm in the middle of SLS. No, work the ones that you can work in between the cracks of activity and work those. So they don't have to all be driven from on high, from edicts on high. Lots of folks know the things they could work on. Hey, that's what we call it, continuous process improvement. I don't have to stop what I'm doing. I improve it on the next time I do it. So bottom line, hey, everybody, those things that you may have been in part of or worked on, pull them back out and see if there's something in your functional area you work on it. And we are going to try to get it where it's pushed from on high, but it doesn't have to be pushed from on high. Work with functional leads to disposition. That message that we put it in a report. It's on a bookshelf now, or in a website right now. That's out there. People can tap back in it. Now, most of it came from the voices of the people in those areas. Operations issues came from ops people. They shouldn't be shocked, particularly if they were in on the lessons learned discussion with either their branch or division lead, or if they were in one of our brainstorming or think tank sessions. Shouldn't be shocked. Oh, I've seen this before. I wrote part of that one. Now, what are we going to do about it? If it doesn't creep the scope up, if you can do it within your branch or your department or your division, do it. Don't wait on getting a action item from a Mother May I from Mr. Lightfoot or anything like that. But the key things, and then bottom line, I'll go back to just, hey, pick up on those critical functions that we all know we own. There's 100 things we could do. There's only 4 things we have to do every time a new program, small, medium, or large, comes up. These are the 4 things they always ask me. There's 96 other things I could get asked to do. I should maybe work on these 4 just to get them better defined, what I need to train up on, what tools need to be involved, and work those in your areas. And then sharpen the tools. You hone them up on small things. See if you can get work with your division director, or if there's small tasks that spin off of SLS technology areas or roadmap areas out to farther out to the right. Can we do something that? Can we work with our contractors so that we're sharpening up some of the tools so that when it comes time to invoke that design or that solution, we're up to speed with either doing the oversight, insight role as we might do as a NASA entity, or maybe we've made the make-buy decision and we're going to do that. We're not going to just have a contractor bid on it. We might do some of those things. So anyway, just sharpen our tools up on the smaller things that we can get a hold of and things like that. And I'm saying this like we never think of that. No, I know everybody does, but I'm re-emphasizing that with everybody. And again, the big factor, and having come from the contractor side, the most devastating thing that's happened in the last 35 years has just been the lack of R&D. We've when we went shuttle, and I love shuttle, I grew up on shuttle, but shuttle ate so much of our lunch, no money was now flowing down from big NASA to the contractors, and they tend to mirror when we give them more R&D money to go off NRAs and research things and things like that. They pony up a little bit more, thinking $1 of mine invested might win me a contract. Well, when we lower that R&D money from the federal level, everybody else is going, well, they're not buying anything, so so everybody's honed back, or I should say, cut back so drastically on their R&D. The skill sets haven't moved. You know what I mean? The bricks and mortar hasn't changed, and they won't change radically for solid or liquid, propellant-based, launch capabilities and things like that. And so those are the things we need to encourage our bosses and things. hey, we got to free up a little money to go learn the things or relearn the things that we need to do. But the technical things aren't really what's really, that's my parting shot to you guys. The technical things aren't really holding us up. It's the things that are like, oh, gosh, we should, that wasn't in one of my tech classes. That was that Systems Engineering 101 class I took, back, ages ago. So anyway, that'd be my thing. You guys it's a great crew. Again, I'm not at all worried about the technical world in the future, but I'm hopeful but reserved that we need to really rework and reemphasize working on some of these big systems level planning, communication, and things like that. Knowing our skills, honing the skills, and getting those well documented, and training our new people to get into. But anyway, appreciate your time and effort here. If people have questions or you want to talk with me offline, please do. And I encourage people to grab a hold of the knowledge management report when they get a chance. And I'm going to really, I went back to engine systems, and I'm going to try to push hard to get a lot of our, if you will, more crucial lessons learned kind of invoked in the various functional areas. And we're working with the Chief Engineer's Office, representative from Chief Engineer's Office, there's Jennifer, and to, at the center level things, do what we can do. Get the wording in place in the Red Book. Get the wording in place in our project and program planning, that now the Chief Engineer not only just gathers lessons learned, he's going to do something about them. In other words, we're actually going to poke on my boss, but the boss is probably going to poke back. So, we'll get some action back out of that. But anyway, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.